I'm going to talk a little bit about what I believe are the 3 secrets of business success and life. Basically, without a purpose, it's very difficult to move forward. And as a young man, I was about 15 years old, really didn't have a tremendous purpose in my life. In fact, I was running around with the wrong people. My father would remind me of that every day or keep me after school or whatever at home. And one teacher that I really had heard about that I wasn't particularly sure I liked or not, I knew he was the cross-country coach, came up to me and said, "Ray, you ought to go out for cross-country." And when you're young like that, and I'm sure you've been in that boat when you don't really have a lot of self-confidence, I literally looked behind me because I thought he was talking to somebody else. I couldn't imagine him being me. The reason I'm sharing the story is that basically what happened, that was a transformative experience in my life because I went out for cross-country and I realized I had a gift I didn't understand I had. And from that time, I went from a D student to an honor roll student in 1 semester. Now, what was the difference? The difference was that suddenly somebody believed in me more than I believed in myself. It became a purpose that I was willing then to move ahead on. And it became a part of my life until about 5 years ago when I found it difficult to run again. But I ran for almost 35 years, and it was an important change, transformative element in my life. So what I'm saying is that sometimes we have to capture a vision, and it's not easy for us to find. And the point in school and the point of having mentors is that it enables us to see things in us that we hadn't seen in ourselves. The second thing is I think in business and life, we have to become all we were created to be. And we don't know what that is because basically it's important that we work with other people to find out what that means. And the third thing is that we really, really have to help other people grow. And if a business has a purpose, has a leader who's willing to develop himself, and has people, there is nothing they can't achieve. But I want people to understand, when I talk about success, success means different things to everybody in this room, and I understand that. But the joy of this is, to me, success is the progressive realization of a worthy business goal. And I think as I've listened to each of you in here, we all have something that we want to share, that we want to build on with one another. So the goal is now, how do we get to that? When we change the way we think about business, the business we think about changes. And so as I told you initially, I think it's important for us to understand our definition of a business is something that can run without you. And as I work in small businesses, myself included, many times what I find is that businesses really are not businesses. They're simply glorified jobs, and sometimes those jobs become more of a burden than they become a joy. The dream turns into a nightmare at some point. So what we're trying to do is help everybody understand, if you change the way you think about your business, the idea is, how can it run without me? Because once that happens, even in terms of business value, it doubles the moment you can say, I can leave this business, because then somebody says, great, I can buy it. And unless and until you can make that statement, everybody says, well, what happens if something happens to you? The business is gone. So that's what I want you to think about. Change your thinking about having a business that you're in to a business that runs without you. Passive income. So as I want you to look at this, basically my experience is that every business requires organizational leadership and strategic goals. We need to know where we're going, and it's got to be that purpose that drives us forward. The second side is inside, individual energy. The real challenge for us as leaders of businesses is, how do we get people to move forward so that we have them engaged by their passion? And so they're saying, as I've said many times, they're willing to take a bullet for you. Now, does it really get to that? I've been a Vietnam veteran. We have some others in this room that may have been Vietnam veterans. I was willing to take a bullet for my beliefs in the country. Right or wrong, the point is that if you have a business like that, you can transform and change the world. Guys, when you have a purpose, nothing's a sacrifice. Without a purpose, oh, do I really have to do this? I mean, how many times have you ever been there? And so if you don't have that in your business, you've got people going against you instead of with you. So that's what we're trying to do here. Is everybody with me on that? Now, when you get a perfect team, companies that share knowledge with everyone systematically do better. Here's the point in this. Systematically work together to solve problems. Consistently convert data, which is what you use for a bottom of a bird cage. Whoops. Thank you. I clicked the bottom. I didn't mean to. So anyway, you got to convert data from birdcage stuffing to information. But as information, it's really not meaningful. It becomes meaningful when it becomes knowledge that's shared across the organization. Then what do you have? You get results. And it's got to be tied into your vision. This is about the DNA of a business. And the DNA is quite simple. No matter what you're doing, you've got to be able to guide it, get it, do it, and run it. And so what I've given you here is basically some very simple descriptions of what those things are. So when you dissect your business, you can make it work. And here's my point. I want you to look around the room at the other participants in here for a minute. We're all very different. We come from different nationalities, we come from different races, etc. But you know, when we strip it away and you look at the DNA and the genetic code, we're 99.99% the same. And so when people tell me, well, no, my business is different. Well, yes, it is. But no, it isn't. You know what I'm saying? And so the point is that it all has, you got to guide it, get it, do it, and run it. I don't care what you're doing. And here's the point to you. We work a lot with nonprofits. I want you to understand this as an example. Every business is a church. That means it's got a social side. You have to be able to attract people. And every church is a business. You got to have money to make it run. And so the point is that I want you to understand that if you get those balances right, you can really, really create a business that'll sustain itself. When you change the way you think about your business, the business you think about changes. And so those of us who are entrepreneurs are willing to take risks. Most of our employees want security. So we have a balance point. Our job is to create what I call a hybrid between here's some security, and I recommend everybody pay their employees, if you have them, 25% less in the marketplace, and then create incentives, entrepreneurial incentives that engage them in doing something more than they're thinking. That BHAG, all those things can start, and they start thinking, well, I can do this. I can make more money if I kind of exert myself, and you can figure out a way to do that anywhere. And that's the whole point, is create this hybrid. Just like if you have a hybrid car, you get a lot better gas mileage. If you have a hybrid employee, you get a lot better output. Does that make sense? And so one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do is start thinking in terms of 25% pay less. And so when you have a downturn, what happens to your overhead? It goes down, right? Instead of, my God, I gave all these people raises, and now our marketplace has dried up, or the sales have dried, and now we've got all these costs. And so what do? We lay off our best people. When you're up to your butt in alligators, it's hard to remind yourself to drain the swamp, right? Now here I'm going to share something with you that's really important. When you look at that expression, and I do this on the board many times, once we start draining the swamp, and that's your business, finding problems, are there more problems or less problems? You remember the alligators? When you start draining the swamp, snakes show up. You know, snapping turtles. All sorts of things show up, and I have people say, before you got here, we didn't have any of these problems. What happened before? The water was covering all the problems, right? It was a status quo. No, we don't have any problems here, everything's fine. And all the employees are going, yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? So the point is that once we start draining the swamp, it exposes problems for us to then do what? Fix them. And so I tell people, you need to expect a 20% reduction in productivity as we move through this. If you're not willing to do that, it's a waste of my time and your money. And so that's the real key here. Because when you come up the other side, what happens? Bang. That's the exciting part. The point is that if you don't have a purpose, then everybody says, why are we doing this? But if you're all focused, you're going, I'll do this. This is okay.